Hey, we're back on the Love Encompassed podcast. I'm Phil.
And I'm Victoria.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And you know what? How are you feeling today?
Listen, sis is fighting on and struggling for her life over here because this shirt, the dryer, has got
The
me.
dryer too many times on high.
I've been pulling on it like, ugh, trying to make it fit.
Nice.
Right now, I feel like you wear something, you feel like a stuffed biscuit. You know what I mean? Like you're just.
I remember when I was horribly out of shape and I accused you of putting all my shirts in the dryer.
You did.
Because all my button-down shirts, the buttons were fighting for their dear life. And I was like, why you keep drying these shirts? And you're
Hey,
like,
bro.
dude, I'm not drying your shirts.
That one's not the dryer. I think that's
Yeah.
the extra box of cheeses you've been snacking on.
Consuming on a regular basis. I've added to it. Well, I'm excited because, thank you again for everybody for all your support. We tell you each episode, but it does mean a lot. Follow us on Instagram, on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for subscribing. That's very cool. And we love the comments. We do read them all.
Yeah.
And we do see the DMs and everything else.
Fire
So thank you.
emojis.
Yeah. So thank you for doing that. Love it. And any topics you want us to cover, go ahead and put those down in the comments, and we'd love to cover them today.
Yeah, and if
Or
you've
any
been
other
following us, you know that we have been doing that. We are people of our words.
Right. There's bonus episodes that came out.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that you hopefully you watched them.
Yeah.
They were cool. So they were your questions.
Yeah,
So.
it was the questions from the post that we said, hey, we want to hear from you. And so we thought, you know what, we're going to do a bonus episode where we address some of the questions. A lot of it was kind of like umbrellaed because a lot of people had the same questions, but
Yeah. So there's different things that people post, and one of the things we were talking about, honestly, was like overcoming obstacles in marriage and where our faith kind of lies in marriage. So we're both faith people.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're big into our faith, and so what has that done to help our marriage and help us overcome things that have happened in marriage? Because inevitably, it doesn't matter. You're going to face stuff in marriage.
Yeah.
All the time. Any relationship, you're going to face obstacles.
Oh my gosh, yeah. You're going to face stuff in marriage as a couple, and you're going to face stuff where one spouse may be dealing with something, but it still affects you as a couple, and working through that.
Yeah. So let's talk about it for a second.
Okay.
Let's talk about obstacles that have come up, right?
Oh, let me count the ways.
Yeah. It's like pick one. We've had obstacles that have come up from financial obstacles that have come up. So we moved. The boys were young.
Yeah.
We were living in a house, and we ended up moving. We had to kind of sell that home, get rid of that home, and we moved and kind of made a life-altering decision. It was kind of a tough time.
Yeah,
honestly, it was a lot to process through. The boys were younger at the time, but it was a lot for us to process through.
Oh my gosh, it was that. It was dealing with I said in a couple of other episodes, I don't remember exactly which one, recognizing for the longest I was in denial that I experienced trauma growing up. And so when that came to surface and dealing with that, dealing with when racial tensions were really high, because obviously our boys are biracial. So racial tensions were really high, and having conversations with them about that and helping them understand, and then with them dealing with it when they got to middle school, having to work through that.
Yeah, it's tough.
I feel like for me, the personal stuff was hard and the financial stuff is hard, but I find it harder when your kids are dealing with stuff, especially when they get to an age to where you really can't. Well, I mean, you can, but you kind of have to coach from afar.
Yeah.
Which was hard for me. You know what I mean? Like the first time they got to high school and something happened between the teacher, I was like, point them out.
Right.
Like I wanted, let me holler at you real quick for a second. But I couldn't do that because they are teenagers. They are young men. And I can't, is it demasculate?
Yeah.
Is it emasculate or
Demasculate.
I was trying to use a big word, y'all. But I can't take away from who they are becoming as young men. They have to learn how to face difficulty and how to have difficult conversations and how to deal with confrontation. So I couldn't come in like, Mom, I got you. So it was hard, working through that and just, it's just been so much.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, though, is like when you're talking about overcoming obstacles, here's the natural reaction for people is you try to handle things on your own. And I don't think you can do that, especially when you're in a relationship, you're in a marriage, you're parenting. It's like, yeah, as your kids kind of get older, you do change. You can't solve their problem.
No.
You got to help them process through the problems.
Yeah.
And
just say wink if you want me to get involved.
Right. Just say the word. Just send me the emoji and it's on and popping. But I think even in a marriage.
Yeah.
I think that's the communication that has to happen because sometimes you think to yourself, all right, well, I can jump in and try to solve this problem. We can overcome this obstacle and all this other things instead of, hey, let's process it through it together.
Yeah. And also like one of the things we dealt with that I think, I had almost forgot, but I just was reminded by was, I think it was like around year 4 or 5 for us. We had just moved, the boys were under the ages of 7 at the time, and we were really having issues with our communication. And typically we're not like, typically we're good at communicating, and typically like we're like, hey, we are very understanding of each other and everything like that. And it was just for whatever reason during this season in our lives, our communication was just not hitting. And as a result, like our disagreements were more than what we were used to. Like, it's not uncommon for anybody to get a disagreement with anybody. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you're married to the person and you're living with them. But we didn't really have a lot of disagreements because we were just really pretty chill for the most part. Like they came once in a blue moon. But this season, it was just like, man, what is the problem? And it wasn't like we were talking about divorce or anything like that because, day one, when we got engaged, we said divorce was not an option. And I think that helped because our mindset was there isn't an out. And I think because we knew that there wasn't an out, we showed up all the more because there's like, well, if divorce isn't an option, we're not going to be unhappily married. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to be miserable. But it was like that time we were really having issues with our communication and we had to take that next step and get a counselor.
Yeah. I mean, I looked at it in that moment. We faced an obstacle, right? You could either bury yourself or you can hit it head on. And I tell people, it's like, we were walking on the same street, just on different sides.
Yeah.
Heading in the same direction. We just weren't walking together. And again, it wasn't anything divorce or anything like that. It's just, we were just like missing each other.
It was like the connections was misfiring.
Right. And we did. We faced that obstacle and then we said, all right, hold on. What do we need to do? Mm-hmm. Obviously, we're not getting anywhere with trying to talk to each other. Mm-hmm. Let's bring in a third party for them to tell you that I'm right about everything. And then that way you believe them.
Right, because that's exactly what homeboy said.
What happened. Kind of. So, again, though, when you're facing obstacles in life or you're facing obstacles in your marriage or relationship or whatever, I think there's got to be a little bit of mutual, like, hey, we're both kind of in this and we're going to have to face this obstacle together. What do we need to do? Let's be honest with each other and let's face this. It doesn't matter. Like you could be married and your spouse could be sick. And it's like, all right, this is an obstacle that you're facing. Well, let's talk about it. Let's figure out what is needed in order to overcome the obstacle rather than just allowing the obstacle to overcome us.
And that could be hard, right? Like I remember when, I had my situation where I was dealing with the postpartum depression after having Brandon, and then there was a time when you had to have a emergency surgery, and you were in the hospital for almost a week, and then it was like a recovery process for you for a couple of months. And during that time, I was going through school. We had these 2 younger boys. I love my husband, but sometimes he don't be following what the doctors be saying. And so I had to make sure he was taking his medicine because I'm like, I don't want you to get in a worse situation. So it's like I'm helping you, but I'm working through not personally feeling depleted while helping you and doing this and showing up here and doing that. And that was really challenging. And so during that time for me, I had to remind myself this isn't forever, right, Victoria? This is a temporary circumstance. And, but I still communicated with him like, hey, I love you.
Take your
But I need
meds.
you to take your medicine, bruh. I need you to listen to the
You're a grown
doctors because you're
man.
making it harder on sis. But I think when you're in those times, like, we keep, like you said, we keep going back to it, but we got to communicate when we're going through those times. And I think understanding that it's not for forever and allowing the grace to manifest in the relationship, to understand like, okay, because I know this isn't forever, I'm going to show up for him and understand like, hey, I may feel like it's easy for me to feel like, what about me? I'm feeling depleted. I'm carrying everything. This is hard. But in those moments, I would just be like, okay, God, like, and this is real talk conversation. Like, okay, God, I'm having a hard time. I do not understand what's going on. This is frustrating. Like, what's good? Like, yes, we've communicated, we talked, and he could only do so much in the state he could do. I mean, I can imagine what you were feeling when you see your wife in a fetal position in the bed crying, talking about she don't want her child that she just had. Like, that's crazy to think about now saying that, because I adore our boys, but I was like, what in the world when it was happening?
And I think that's where your faith comes in, right? So I knew in that moment, hey, obviously there's a lot going on with her. There's all these things, but my trust and my faith and in God, my trust and faith in who we were, it's like, hey, we're going to get through this. And sometimes I think when people face obstacles, that you just want to hurry up and get it over with.
That's real.
And just, okay, good, it's done, and I don't have to worry about it no more, and it's past. Let's not talk about it. If you don't fully heal from something, or you just try to skip over it, it's like going to the gym and then deciding you're just going to work out for the first 5 days like you've been working out for 3 months and then expect to be ripped.
Yeah.
There's a process that sometimes has to happen in order for you to get there. And sometimes when an obstacle comes up in your marriage, in your life, with your kids, it's good to take a step back for a second and say, all right, let's process through this. Let me figure out what are the things that I need to do and what I need to grow from. And then we hold on to our faith.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, that's our firm foundation in what we do. And we're not saying we're perfect at it.
No.
But it is something that I even went back to in those moments of saying, hey, wait a second. I trust God in this moment. We're going to get through this. It may not be as quick as I want it to happen. And we may have to get some other people involved. But I trust that it's going to work out.
And, trying not to suppress your feelings while everything is going on. Because you think, oh, I don't want to be a bother to my spouse. I don't want to add more to my spouse. I would say in those situations, like if you feel like he or she's not in that space to take on maybe something that you're carrying while they're going through something, you have a friend, like he said, a pastor or whoever the case may be. But I'll be completely honest and transparent. There has been times when we have been going through stuff and I'm low-key mad at God. Like, Lord, what's good? Like,
Easy person to
do you hear
blame.
me? Do you hear my prayers? Like, is there a reception problem? Like, what's going on? And I've been frustrated. And here's the thing. And I'm just like, in the moments where I have been upset with God, I try to act like I wasn't upset with God, but I knew I was upset. You know what I'm saying? And God knew I was upset. And it was like, okay, we're going to tiptoe around this, Victoria? Like, what's good? But I'm just like, that's real. Like, there are moments sometimes when we have gone through things, and I will be honest and the first one to say my faith will be like, yeah, let's go. Quoting my scriptures, like, we got this, God's going to provide, or whatever the case is. And then when time happens, and in that meantime, and you're like, okay, Lord, it's been like 4 months. Where you at? It's just like, I think those are the moments when it's just like, you have to really fight for it not to weigh on you, because it's so easy for that to happen. And I just, and it's normal. I think it's normal to feel that sometimes when you're going through it.
Yeah, I think it's normal because it's a relationship, and it helps me to realize I have obviously a relationship with God, relationship with you, so in relationships, that's normal. You're going to have those moments where it feels like the other person's not listening, or this person's not listening, or God's not listening, or whatever, because it's a relationship. And you have to work through that together and figure that out as you're going through. Because one thing that I know for sure in our 18 plus years of marriage, obstacles happen all the time. Like there's always something that comes up, right?
You cannot push and pass go. Is that the
Right.
Monopoly term?
Yeah, you can't just pass go for
There it is.
$200. It's obstacles pop up. Things happen in life. There's, it's the old thing is, why do bad things happen to good people? I don't know. You know what I mean? But I do know that you can overcome them. You can work through them. You'll make a way through. You're gonna walk through things in life, but you walk through with the faith in God that, hey, it may be rough, may be tough right now, but we're walking through this. We're going to make it through. Doesn't take away from the obstacle.
No.
Doesn't take away from what you're facing. Doesn't take from what you're dealing with. Could be your kids. Like, we've all had moments to where it just feels like there may be a week or a few days or whatever it is, but you're just butting heads with your kids over the smallest things. And sometimes I've realized, hey, this is me. I'm having a bad day. I'm having a bad week. I'm having something's going on and I'm taking it out on them. But that doesn't mean that things don't come up that you have to work through.
No, and there is definitely, I laugh because of what I'm about to say. There's definitely been moments where stuff has happened or, because I love him down. You hear me? Like, love him down. And there has been times where, someone will do him dirty or do him wrong, and I'm like upset by it, and I want to be like, whatever. And you are like, hey, it's all right, because at the end of the day, I'm still a Christian first. And I be like, bruh, I think sometimes you're more saved than I am.
Victoria is my mashed potatoes. That's what I tell her all the time. And what I mean by that is when we go to a restaurant and you order mashed potatoes and they bring you out with regular potatoes, I'm the type of person where I'm just like, it's potatoes, it's whatever. She's like, excuse me, he ordered mashed potatoes. We'll wait for those mashed potatoes.
He ain't want the brown gravy.
And I'm like, it's not that big of a deal. And she's like, it is a big deal. You get what you ordered. Yeah. And then it's like people are like, do you ever get mad that she's like, I'm like, no, I don't get mad at all. At least I get my mashed potatoes. So that's what I want.
But you know what? Real talk, and I'm going to tell on myself here because I would, when we first got married, and you probably are going to remember once I start talking about this, when we first got married, because I was still dealing with that I didn't know that I was dealing with. I was, some poor behavior of how I processed my emotions because of suppressing from childhood and all that. And so there was this one particular time he was like, hey, let's go out for dinner. And I'm like, okay. And you took me out to this restaurant and we're sitting in this restaurant. I'm like, oh my God, babe, you're so sweet. And he was like, so a reason why I brought you here
Right.
because lately your behavior has been not okay.
I had to take her to a public place.
I'm like, why you gotta take me to a public place?
Actually, she said, well, we're doing. Wait, is that why you brought me here? Because we're in a public place? I was like, it is. That's why we're here.
Then when he did it, I laughed because I was like, oh man. Because basically the synopsis of the conversation was like, hey, I am hesitant to tell you things. I'm hesitant to be honest with you about some things concerning you. I'm hesitant to say, hey, this is what we need to do in a decision making out of fear of how you are going to react. And he was like, and respectfully, babe, I can't because then that affects the way I lead this house. And I just can't. The person who I am, which I can't. So when I respect him greatly for, doing it in such a loving and honest way. But oh my goodness, I felt awful because I wasn't like an awful person. It was just because I didn't know how to, I didn't like whenever, when that was going on, I wasn't loud or ignorant or obnoxious. It was just, I would either catch an attitude or I would recluse and I wouldn't talk. And so then he's like, my God, if I tell this woman we need to do this, I don't know if she gonna snap or she gonna not talk to me for 2 days. But it wasn't any like reflection toward him, or I was trying to, make him pay for something. It was just, I didn't know how to process my emotions and what I was feeling. And unfortunately, it was showing up really poorly. So when he did confront me, I was like, okay, I have to own this. This isn't okay. I need to work through this. And I'm grateful that in that time, you were patient with me.
That time.
Oh, boo. But you were patient with me. You were understanding because you understood where I was coming from.
Yeah.
But you were also patient with me and allowed me the space to kind of like heal through that. But I was also very much so aware after he had that conversation with me, okay, Victoria, this is something that you have to be intentional about working through and changing and owning up your part in this.
Yeah, I think, again, things come up. So you have to be okay with having those conversations. Maybe you got to take him to a restaurant. Get him some appetizers first.
Feed the monster.
Feed him a little bit. Calm him down. And then have a real conversation. But I think it's even with me, right? It's I'm not perfect. There's issues that I have that I've done, and you've had to say, just one. But you've had to say, hey, man, let me talk to you. You can't blow up like that. You got to be whatever. You got to do this. You got to do that. And it's calmed me down. I think that's the thing. When you're dealing with an obstacle, or you're dealing with things in life in general, it's not, I heard this said one time, it's not you dealing with it necessarily, like you're confronting the obstacle. It's you and the person overcoming it. And if you can change the mindset of, oh my gosh, there's an obstacle in front of us. It's like, wait a second. How do we work together to overcome this?
That's good.
How do we work together to, get past this? Instead of the obstacle is so big, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
I think when you start telling your mind or you start thinking about it, I'm not one of those people who like studies the mind and all that other stuff, but it's like, I do believe the minute you start telling yourself that you can't do it or something's too big or whatever, you will go into a mode of, okay, well, this is impossible. I think when you sit down with somebody and say, hey, how can we overcome this?
Yeah.
Your brain start to kick in and figure out a way to do it.
And something that's helped me too, because, you are a very positive person.
Yeah.
And so I remember there were times when we would be dealing with an obstacle or a circumstance or a situation together, or if I was dealing with it personally. And like you would come in like, hey, babe, it's going to be okay. And hey, babe, things are going to change. And hey, babe, it's not always going to be this way. And there are moments, if I'm honest, which we've had this conversation before, where I'd be like, hey, man, why you always so positive? Ain't you struggling too? Like, let me know. But I appreciate the fact that you took that and you remain who you are as being positive, but you did let me know, like, hey, I go through it too. Hey, I struggle with things too. Hey, I feel what you're feeling too. But the thing is like, I'm not trying to, and I wasn't trying to take away you being positive in hard times, but it was comforting to know as a partner that the feelings that I'm feeling, I'm not the only one feeling this way. So it kind of helped me to feel like we are going through this together and we are dealing with this together. And there's even been times where, when, if I'm dealing with something and I, kind of be quiet or whatever, and you told me like, hey, when you don't tell me what you're dealing with, it makes me feel like I'm not going through it with you, and it makes me feel kind of left out. Not in a selfish way, like what about me, but like I'm your partner. I love you. I want to walk this with you. And so when you said that, I was like, man, I never saw it that way. I didn't think of it that way. And so I had to make sure, like, okay, you know what? Yeah, Victoria, be intentional about making sure you're telling him what you're feeling. And then you were intentional with like, hey, I can still be positive and encourage the situation, but also let you know you're not alone in feeling what you're feeling while we're going through what we're going through.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a tendency to be super positive. I'm very optimistic.
Yeah.
Like
it's a great quality.
Yeah, it's a great quality to have. It can be blinding optimism sometimes, but I do have that tendency from just things that I came out of. So, but everybody kind of goes through things, and it's good to communicate those things because otherwise you do feel alone.
You do.
And you think, am I the only one who's thinking this thought?
Yeah.
Am I the only one who's thinking? man, what's going to happen if, or this, that, or the other. And it's like when you start telling it, there's something about when you tell the other person or you're sharing it. We're big on the Bible, and the Bible says when you confess to one another, you're healed. And I think some of that, when you start talking, it helps heal your heart a little bit.
I would agree with that. And I feel like when, because what can happen, I feel like if everybody processes things differently, everybody handles situations different. And so I think what happens is if you have one partner who, when they go through the fire, they're like, it's okay, I got flame retardant on, let's run through it. And you have the other person that is very much so aware of what's going on and it's nicking them and hitting them differently. I think if you're not careful, you can view the other person as they don't care as much.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They don't think it's as bad. They're kind of aloof to it. Don't you care? And it begins to frustrate you. But it goes back into the importance of communicating. Hey, I feel the fire just like you do. I just feel, maybe we can approach it differently. And the beauty of the thing when you're in a relationship, you have each spouse is different. They have positives and weaknesses, right? And putting them together is what kind of makes you even that much stronger. And so in my weakness that I'm growing through, if you know, you know, as far as okay, I'm going to be more aware of how my attitude is when we're going through hard times. I'm not going to get all sad and in my feelings. I'm going to shift to your perspective and being more positive and being more hey, it's going to be okay, Victoria. This is not the end of the world. This is just going to make you strong on the other side of it, while you're saying, hey, I too will be positive, but I'm not ignorant to what's going on.
Yeah, I think you have to be. I think sometimes you can just be like, oh, God, I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, he will, but he's also equipped you to take care of it as well. And so he's asked you to work. It's the old adage. It's hey, work like it depends on you, pray like it depends on God. And so I think you have to keep that in mind, right? And know that you're going to face things in life. Yes, you have your faith, and that's the foundation and all of that. And if you don't have that, it is tough because you can lose hope. You can get in despair. I've been there before. And so when I found my faith, that's when I really started to be okay, there is light. I've been low. I've been super low. And I've never been back to that spot since. So we can it's not as bad as that. So I think that's where my positivity comes in.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah, I've never been that bad. On drugs and doing that. It's I haven't been to that spot. I'm not there anymore. So it's positive than that. But it's also the realization of things happen.
Yeah.
And there are moments. It's we always joke with the movie Inside Out. And the emotions, right? You can't be joy 24/7. There's other emotions that have to happen, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's okay to express those emotions to get past the obstacles in life.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brushed on that because I was going to ask you, were you always this super joyful, positive outlook person, or was it something that happened? Because I feel like our youngest Preston is a lot like you. He can be dealing, and he'll get frustrated, but his ability to move past a frustration and keep it moving is impressive, especially for the age of at 15. So do you feel like that was something that was just always in you, or do you feel like it was because, hey, I was on drugs, I did this, I experienced this, I had this, and I chose to, from this point forward, after overcoming it, I'm going to be positive because I know how deep you can spiral down with not being positive?
Yeah, I think I probably was growing up, and then I think through things that happened in my life in my teen years, I think that's what kind of threw me a little bit. And then I think now, obviously, once I found my faith in my 20s, I think what ended up happening was that period of time, whatever that time was, I think in those moments right there, that's when I really became after I found my faith, I became so positive because of the life that I was living up until that point. And so I think that's where I look at things in life and I'm like, I'm not down in that spot. Like, I'm not there any longer. I'm in a different spot now. And so that's why I stay positive now a lot of times. And I've just realized as you've gotten older, not everything is a thing. And remember when you were young and you dated somebody and then like you broke up and you thought it was like the love of your life and you're never gonna. It's like, I think as you get older, you start to realize in life, it's like, yeah, everything's not a thing, and this too shall pass. And I heard this one time actually. It was an actor. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Tom Hanks, and he said he wishes he would have heard in life. He wishes he would have heard at a very young age. This too shall pass. So you have a lot of success. Things are going great. This too shall pass. Things are bad. Things aren't looking good. This too shall pass. And so I think that's just, I heard that and I thought, you know what? That makes sense. Like things in life, it will pass through. Obstacles will happen. You're going to work through them. You're going to discover about yourself things that you didn't know before. And whether they're negative, you can improve on, and whether they're positive, you can take with you. And it's like, that way when you face the next one, you learn from it.
That's really good. And I will say being with you, that has been something that I have grown in, is like, and when I say grown in, I mean like recently. I would say
Last week.
I would say like the past year. I feel like I have done a better job with when things happen because I am a processor. So sometimes when things would happen, I'd be like, oh my gosh, the walls are coming down. What's going to happen? But the past year, you have really helped me to be able to look at a situation and ask myself, okay, Victoria, this is not as bad as you think it is. What's the worst that could happen from this situation? And I think in doing that, it kind of took the Goliath out of the situation, because not every circumstance is a Goliath. There are some, but not everyone. And then it also allowed me to learn how to shift my perspective by looking back, right, on times past. Even the moments when we were upset with God and frustrated with God, you were like, God, what in the world? But if I really think back and look back, they may not have always worked out the way I wanted them to, but they worked out.
Yeah.
And I grew from it. And I'm stronger because of it. So shifting the perspective of what's happening to me to what's happening for me.
Yeah. It's great. And I think perspective is everything. Even you brought up, Goliath and David and Goliath. A lot of times you can read the David and Goliath, and we've all heard this story. And it's Goliath is this huge giant, and then you have David, this little shepherd boy who kills him with a slingshot and a stone, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, it's the underdog David and Goliath. Until you change your perspective and you really study that story out and you really think about it, and from historians and everything else, Goliath had to have somebody bring him down the mountain to fight David in that valley, because he was a giant, and a lot of scholars believe he couldn't see real well. And so he was great at hand-to-hand combat. David was a skilled, with a slingshot, and he could hit things up to 200 yards away. That's why he said, I've killed the lion and I've killed the bear. He didn't fight a lion and a bear with his bare hands. He hit him with a slingshot, and that's what did it. So when he's running at Goliath, he had no intention of ever fighting Goliath hand-to-hand combat. He was going to throw a stone just like he had done with a lion and a bear, and that's how he killed him. So when you change your perspective of David was never an underdog, he had the upper hand.
That's good.
And so I look at life as sometimes when you're faced with a Goliath, it's what do you have in your hand? You're not the underdog.
That's
what
good.
can you use to change the perspective of your life that says, hey, no. I'm actually got the upper hand
Yeah.
in this obstacle.
That's really good. And even when you were saying that, what also came to me was because of his past experiences with the lion, the tiger, and the bear, gave him the tools and the know-how to defeat the Goliath.
Yeah. He wasn't doing something that he'd already experienced
That's
things
really good.
before. So it was just a lot easier. But
You want an
hate to,
offering?
yeah. Hate to ruin everyone's Bible stories because now in children's churches
like,
all
you
over
better
America,
preach.
they're going to be like, oh
better
my gosh,
preach."
David and Goliath.
That was
But-
really good though. I never in all my years I've never had it breaking down to me in that way. Like he wasn't the underdog in that situation because for the longest that is how David and Goliath are, that story is kind of viewed. It's the underdog defeating the whatever. But to say, hey, I'm not the underdog in this fight.
Yeah.
I've been here before. And even if you don't know how to, even if you haven't been there before, if you really think about it, you got tools in your bag that you can pull from to fight where you are.
And that's how you can overcome obstacles. And a lot of that, there's a great book called David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. It's great. You can get it on Amazon. But a lot of it is you are equipped to overcome the obstacles that you have in your life if you just think about where you have come from. And you have people that are there, like, that can help you see those tools. Sometimes it's hard to see the tools that we have because we just see our shortcomings, but you have other people that can speak into you and say, well, wait a second. So it's good to have people. It's good to have old friends and it's good to have new friends, but it's never good to just have new friends or just have old friends, right? You got to have people that kind of know you enough to say, hey, remember when you came through that? Remember when you came through that? Remember when we overcame that?
Offering a different perspective.
Yeah, you just have to change your perspective on the obstacle. And I think that's the way I look at obstacles in life. I don't look at them as giants. I look at them as, okay, let me change my perspective of how is this going to benefit me in the long run?
Okay, here's a question for you. And it may or may not be for myself, but I'm sure you guys could benefit as well.
It's just our
When
conversation.
you are in the meantime of waiting for a promise that you believe God said he was going to give you, and it seemed like time is winning,
Yeah.
how do you stay hopeful and maintaining that it will happen?
I think that's where it goes back to your faith, right? And is sometimes is as easy as it is. I think it's when you were talking earlier, it's like sometimes you get mad at God. I think God's the easiest thing for all of us. I think he's just the easiest person to blame only because he's not around. It's not like he can talk back. So I think it's just easy, but I think it goes back to my faith in the sense of,
Well, he will talk back, but not like,
yeah, but you know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
like it's easier just to blame everything on him. And so it's like I think for me, when you're going through those moments, the joy of the Lord is your strength. It's that knowing that at the end of the day, he still got me. And yes, it sucks. And yes, the moments suck. And never downplaying hard times or what people go through in life. I never do that. But it's just the knowing that, you know what, he still got me. I don't maybe understand everything that's going on. Like, I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't understand everything that's going on. But at the end of the day, he has my best interest at heart. And I'm going to get through this. I don't necessarily know how. Some days, it's like I've told people, some days it's just 1 minute at a time. It's 1 hour at a time. It's
That's
one
real.
day at a time, 1 week. And I don't know how you're going to get through it, but I do know to just keep walking, don't stop.
That's really good. I think what I'm hearing is that is how you can like remain hopeful, is focusing on the fact like, hey, of who God is, instead of focusing on like the time that you're waiting or how long it's been or the circumstance that's around you. It's
Right.
kind of like Peter in the boat, right? He got out of the boat, started walking on the waves and dealing with the waves, and then he saw the waves and took his eyes off Jesus, and that's when he started to sink.
Right.
Keeping our eyes on Jesus. And I think for me is something I'm still learning how to do is making sure I have a healthy expectation, but also not getting so caught up on how I think God is going to provide the promise that I may have missed, or I am missing how he is providing the promise. And I think those two have been the biggest for me. And I think that's something that he's currently working with me through. So sometimes it could be it's not so much that he's not providing the promise to you because he doesn't want to, but maybe there are some things that, we need to learn that he's trying to get to us so that when he does deliver, we know how to handle it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the thing is you will encounter things in life and obstacles will happen. Issues will come up. Our faith is what grounds us, right? For us anyway, it's what grounds us. And then knowing that we're equipped to handle it.
Yeah.
Somehow, some way, I'm equipped to handle the things that come up in my life. And,
I can do all things through Christ.
Yeah. And it's like, it's not, I never said it was going to be easy.
Yeah.
I think that's what people think is like, well, it's just going to be easy. It's not easy. I'm just saying you're equipped to handle it.
Yeah.
Like you're going to make it through.
That's real to say you're not saying that it's going to be easy because I feel like, and I say this in the most respectful way, but I feel like from childhood to adulthood, for the longest, I felt like the message that was preached was, you're a Christian, nothing bad is ever going to happen, and everything is going to go your way. So when I did start experiencing things that were like off, or that was bad, or that I am waiting, or that it didn't go the way I expected, I found myself confused. And at first I would like point the finger back at me. Okay, Victoria, what did you do wrong? You had to have done something wrong for this not to have happened. But it wasn't until this past, I would say, year and a half where I really started to, okay, God, some of the stuff I was taught, I'm gonna have to it's not adding up for me. So at this point, I need to kind of relearn some things, just being real, relearn some things because not everything that was taught to me, while it was in the best interest and to their understanding, wasn't always accurate. And so I had to relearn. At first I had to go through the anger or frustration. I'm like, why did I have to learn that? And blah, blah, blah. But learning that okay, God didn't say, Jesus didn't say nothing bad would happen, but what he did say was, I would be there with you. I would I have overcome the world. I'm gonna you can do all things. Like he gave us all these things to say how to overcome it, but he never said, if there wasn't nothing to ever overcome, he wouldn't have said you're an overcomer, right? And so having to learn that was like, it took a process because you have years of being taught one way, you know what I mean?
Right. Well, I mean, I think the way you can look at it, though, too, how I've always looked at it, is that, yes, obviously we can overcome everything through Christ and in Christ and everything else, and through Jesus 100% and all the great things. But he still had to go to the cross. So there's still pain. There's still things that you're going to go through in life. It's not like he hit 33 and then was like, all right, cool, man, I'm out. And you're still going to have to go through all the things that he had to go through.
Betrayal.
And you're going to go through those things.
Yeah.
And the great thing is, I do love the part in the Bible where it does say, hey, you don't have somebody, it's not a high priest that hasn't been through what you've been through in life. And so that just makes it more comforting. It makes it understanding that if he can go through things in life and do what he did, then I can make it through the obstacles that I'm making through. He's equipped me to handle it.
Yeah, because I'm not going to put this on anybody, so I'll put it on myself. I think you have to be intentional. I know I feel like I use that word a lot, intentional, but it's a real thing, right? Making sure that you stay in the word, you stay in God's face when dealing with stuff, even when you're mad at God, because it is very easy to be like, I'm mad and I'm frustrated and I don't understand this, so I'm not going to read my Bible. I'm not going to do something that can grow and develop my faith. I'm not going to talk to God. I'm going to seclude myself because I'm dealing with this. But that's really the exact opposite of what you should be doing, because it's not it's not helping you in the long run,
No, not at
because once you're done with your fit, you're kind of like your adult tantrum, your disappointment, which is real, your frustration, which is real. Once you're done with it, you're still going to have to come back to the very thing that you're walking out.
You can't run from things.
Yeah.
So you got to face them head on. And
Yeah.
I think that's really with obstacles in life. You have to hit them head on. You cannot run from them. They'll tell you. I have a friend of mine who was a former Army Ranger, and they say all the time that if someone is, he said, hey, if someone's shooting or whatever, you run at them. You don't run from them. You run at them. In other words, face your fear. We were talking about David and Goliath. He was running at Goliath. He wasn't walking. He was running at Goliath. And so you got to run at it. You got to face it, and you got to overcome it. And, through God, all things are possible.
Yeah, I heard someone say, which I thought was really, really good. I was on social media scrolling, and she was saying how she's gotten to a place where she fully trusts God. God, if it went this way, okay, I trust that you have a better plan. That's why it went this way. God, if you did this, okay, I'm going to trust you because, it's kind of taking yourself out of the equation, because we can't in one breath say, okay, God is God and I'm not, and he created the heavens and the earth and all these things. But then when it comes to your situation, you think you know how to handle it better.
Yeah.
So it's really just letting go of control. Really. I mean, and that's what it is for me. I can't speak to, what you view it as or what you may, view it as. But I think for me, it's a thing of, if I'm honest with myself, it boils down to more of control, letting go of control, and sometimes finding comfort in the control, because you're like, hey, if I control, then I won't be surprised by anything, and I will make sure it's going to work out the way I want to. And you're kind of trying to avoid certain things. But, and it's really coming from a place of fear of the unknown. Well, that's what faith is.
Yeah.
Faith is in the midst of not knowing, not what to do, in the midst of this situation and the unknown of the situation. My faith is in the God who does know, and I have to let go and trust that he doesn't always have to tell me what's at the end of the staircase. I just got to take this, like you said, take the step. Take one step at a time.
One step at a time.
And the staircase will eventually appear. It's like the Pocahontas video where she jumps off the cliff. Don't let it go. I tend to visually revert back to that.
I see that. One day at a time, one step at a time, one day at a time.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Man, I love this one. I love the overcoming obstacles and the faith and everything else. So thank you guys so much for joining this one. Share it, like it, comment, tell us what you think. And we're no experts. So tell us how you overcome obstacles, how you deal with it, how you face things, and things that come up in your life, how you get through it.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.